There's a single question that has plagued my mind for years, perhaps even decades, and that is how Nick Setting makes $310,000 a month in info. And so today I figured we'd answer that.
All right, so we're going to be going over Nick's branding, how he's ultimately getting traffic, how he's converting that traffic into leads, and ultimately how he's converting those leads into buyers. So starting off over here with the traffic on Instagram, he's running these things that I call story sequences. I think it's pretty much what everyone calls them at this point. And so as the name implies, it's pretty much just a sequence of stories in a specific order to get someone to buy, right? And so these have like a few elements to them. Sometimes it's like more of a personal story. Sometimes it's like a little bit of a case study, right? Like I made this dude $1 bajillion in 7 seconds. So, it's some evidence that perhaps you should buy from me. But all of them will typically end with like a DM CTA where you DM a keyword. And then that's going to like lead to the next step of conversion. Or it'll just typically be like a link to a VSL, which one thing that's really, really interesting about Nick Setting's funnel is that he actually has no VSL at all. And so as you can see here, it's just a blank naked Calendly page. Which is very, very interesting there because not a lot of people run that. But I think it's a specifically designed choice that I'll get into here in a little bit. But other than just story sequences, the only other thing that he's really running is just like occasionally credibility. I didn't stalk the dude's stories for like weeks. So, I mean, maybe he's doing a little bit of other stuff, but I didn't really see anything too out of the ordinary just out of Nick Setting's funnel there. Obviously, like with the story highlights, it's always just going to be credibility. It's just clients, 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 clients. And then he is running a DM funnel, which you can't really see it there because I didn't click the more button, but that's one choice that he's made there. So he has like setters in place there. And then he's running like a value VSL just in terms of the link here. This isn't really even like a traditional VSL where there's really any selling going on at all. But pretty much all it is to obviously like build that relationship up with Nick a little bit more because obviously there's going to be people that are more new to his world. And so it's like more of a short form to long form type of content funnel where obviously like he's getting a little bit more attention with the Instagram, not like brain rot or flexing or anything like that. Typically, it's more value-based content, but he's sending it over to the YouTube, which is a little bit more long form. It's going to give people a little bit more substance and people are going to be able to trust him a lot more if it's coming from the YouTube content rather than Instagram content where there's a lot more to consume and it's a lot more long form rather than the short form content that Instagram has to offer, right? And so all it is just going to be a very soft CTA at the end and then pretty much all this is going to be value, right? I don't even need to really have that on there. Next is just like a section here where it's just a little bit of proof. And so a lot of people have been doing this a lot more. You'll typically see it more with the YouTube channel, which he also has one for the YouTube channel. But Nick also has one just on Instagram over here where you can pretty much just say like, hey, this dude went from 0 to 200 grand a month. This dude went from 0 to 100 grand a month. And so like the more that you can put your proof out there, as I always say, the more it's going to be. Do not be shy to share case studies because ultimately people need to see that you can actually do what you say you can do, right? And so just in terms of the reels here, he's doing three main types that I've noticed, basically just value, credibility, and repurpose content. Just in terms of value content, it's just basically like him yapping about, YouTube content, Instagram content, something about funnels, right? Credibility, I'm just talking about mainly just like flexing. Like obviously like you see this dude in like, like a private jet or a plane. I don't really know what's going on there. But like, like whatever is going on there, it's something good, right? The dude probably has money, so therefore he's more likely to be able to make you money, right? And just typically like reformed or repurposed rather podcast content from YouTube is what I've seen there. Moving on to the YouTube here on the About page, he has two things linked. He has his Instagram and his client results linked. Again, like the client results is like his other like YouTube channel. It's mainly proof oriented over there, and then the Instagram is what we just went over there. And here he has like a relationship video, which is like the first thing that you see. I'm pretty sure that's like the channel trailer. So that's pretty much just like immediately getting you into Nick's world, obviously. And it's like, again, building that relationship with him because the second that you see, like, like 0 from 100 grand a month in 7 months, and he's like sort of like walking you through like a very like, sort of emotional to some extent story, right? Where like it's sort of like a rags to riches thing where, like you're in the bedroom, like cold calling, which is like, Sabri Subi's story, and, he like becomes like a Shark Tank investor and millionaire. Pretty much like everyone sort of has that like rags to riches story. And like if people know about that, it's going to be building more relationship with you and more trust with you, right? As for like what the content is, it's pretty much all value. Like again, like as I said with Nick Setting's funnel, nothing is like absolutely crazy. Nothing is out of the ordinary. All of this is just like really just value-based content, which is very typical out of this. In terms of what he's doing here, he just has three things linked: his Instagram there, his proof channel there, and just his high ticket offer, which this framing there is very interesting where all he says is pretty much just like, if you're pre-sold, ready to pay in full, here's your link. And so he's very like upfront with all this. He's not like, like trying to hide that he's selling you anything. He's not doing like, free training, strategy call or whatever. No, he's just saying, if you're pre-sold and you're ready to pay in full, here's your link. And so it's like very like interesting the way he frames that. In terms of his brand, one thing very interesting that I wanted to mention is I really think that one of the things that differentiates him from other brands is just straight up his voice. And that sounds a little bit weird, but like if you look at this dude, you wouldn't typically like expect him to have like the voice that he has. And if he had like the typical white boy voice that I sort of do, I really don't think that he would be as successful as he does, or as successful as he is. But when you just watch his content, he just has like a very engaging sort of way of speaking with like a little bit of an accent. It's just there's not really a way to explain it. You just sort of have to watch a little bit of his content for yourself. But it's just very interesting. It's just engaging. It's a something that differentiates him a little bit. Moving on to the lead gen section here. Again, like as I mentioned before, it's a little bit interesting to where he sort of like frames it like with authority, right? He just says like, no crazy CTA, just send me a DM when you were ready to pay in full. If you're pre-sold, ready to pay in full, here's your link. And so there's no VSL, there's nothing like that because he's actually depending on people to sort of, again, like as he says right here, pre-sell them like on his content there. And so he's expecting people to like actually like go through his Instagram content, go through his YouTube. And so I think he's purposely designed his funnel obviously to where there's no VSL because he doesn't want to have to sell people. He wants people that are coming to him that are already pretty much just ready to buy. And so it's just going to be like as little friction as possible, right? And then just in terms of the questions there's nothing like absolutely insane. You can read over those if you want, but it's all just like typically the same stuff that you'll see there. Then in the conversion section, obviously this Calendly page is just going to lead to a sales call. And the price that I've heard is like anywhere between like 8 grand to 10 grand. He mentioned somewhere on like one of the questions here that it's like a 5-figure investment, but I heard like some dude on Reddit that was like sort of mad at him, I think, say it was like 8 grand. I don't really know. It's a little bit difficult to tell because obviously like most people are running dynamic pricing nowadays where it depends like how much the person has to invest and also how long they're going to be in the program. So it all depends there. But yeah, that's pretty much how Nick Setting is selling 310 grand a month worth of info. And so I do have two things for you which you can check out if you want. The first one is pretty much for anybody in the info space. It's just a ton of resources that I spent probably over 24 hours of my life uploading. That's not talking about like literally just like going out on the internet and actually like finding all these resources. Just the process of uploading them took over 24 hours of my life. So there's a ton of stuff there, and that's all centered around info marketing. And then if you're an info seller specifically only, obviously like you can work with me below. There's just a link to check that out, and actually sort of scratched out the headlines simply because I think it's really entertaining, and you can check that out if you want. Well, other than that, take it easy, or better yet, don't.